So, if you're familiar with college sports, then I'm pretty sure you've heard of the term NIL. If you're not familiar with college sports, you may have still heard the term. So, for those who don't know what NIL is, NIL started in 2021 and it allowed players to earn money off their name, their image, and their likeness. Before NIL, players couldn't make money at all. Players couldn't even receive gifts. You would lose eligibility from receiving gifts from a coach. If a coach bought you a pair of shoes, there was your college eligibility. If a coach gave you a car ride, there may have been an investigation that took away your college eligibility. Because of this, a lot of people view the way the NCAA treated the college athlete as slavery. You had guys bringing in, especially the guys at the blue blood colleges like Duke, Kentucky, guys bringing in millions of dollars to a college, and they can't even afford a meal at nighttime. An example of this is Shabazz Napier back in 2014. Shabazz Napier was a two-time national champion and one of the best players in college basketball, and he came out and said himself that a lot of nights he went to sleep starving because he wasn't able to afford food because he couldn't make money off his name, his image, and his likeness. This is also the reason why the college basketball, college football series ended up ultimately dying off. Shortly after NIL was implemented, a lot of people felt like it would be the downfall of college sports. A lot of people felt like college sports would become more of like professional sports because you have the athletes getting paid and then you have prospects going to the highest bidder, basically like a free agency in professional sport, which ultimately ended up causing the end of an era because we ended up losing Hall of Fame coaches like Nick Saban on the football side, Jay Wright, Coach K, Roy Williams, etc. But it birthed a new era. And with that new era, now we have essentially people buying teams. If you look at Kentucky's roster this year, Kentucky spent $22 million on their roster this year simply just for Kentucky to underperform their price tag. Even looking at BYU, BYU's a top 25 team, but BYU was paid for. With the current trend of NIL, in today's video, I want to discuss how I feel like NIL may shift over the next coming years. And I'm going to give two examples of why I feel like the way NIL deals are given out is going to change. The first example I want to talk about is Jalen Lowe. Jalen Lowe is a point guard that played at Pitt last year that had a really good season, which ultimately led him being the 35th overall player in the transfer portal, the number 10 point guard. Kentucky went out and spent $3 million on Jalen Lowe to come play at Kentucky this year, which in the landscape of NIL recently, that isn't crazy. But the crazy part is the $3 million that Kentucky spent got them 9 games out of Jalen Lowe, only starting 2 of those games. Granted, those games missed are because of injury, and he's not going to play anymore this season. But even when he was on the court, he wasn't really performing. He averaged 8 points a game, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, shooting 35% from the field, 21% from 3. That's a $3 million player. You would think a $3 million player is going to come in and be program changing. But Jalen Lowe literally got paid $3 million to come to barely play. And when he played, to play bad and collect the paycheck. Now, I'm not saying this to bash Jalen Lowe because I actually really enjoy his game. I've been watching him since high school. But for a program to spend $3 million on a player to perform like this, I believe all it's going to do is allow programs to see that we're overpaying for these players. We're overcompensating for these players. Jalen Lowe shouldn't get $3 million. Maybe we throw $750K at him because $3 million, that's getting paid like a pro. And you're getting paid like a pro and out here performing not like a pro. Just looking at that Kentucky team as a whole, they just now reached the top 25 again, just to lose to Florida. But this whole season, they've been disappointing. Yet that entire team was throwing a lot of money. Jaden Quainance is another example. A guy who, if I'm not mistaken, has played 2 or 3 games this season, and he's reportedly getting paid $6 million to be at Kentucky. I believe that college programs aren't going to be willing to pay these guys, these top recruits, these top transfer portal players, an arm and a leg if they can't even play on that arm and a leg. The next example I want to get into is a guy that a lot of you may be familiar with. He's the projected #1 pick in this year's draft, Darren Peterson. Now, the other day I was scrolling across Twitter and I came across an article from Joe Tipton on On3 about Darren Peterson and NIL. So that honestly was my motivation for creating this video. In summary, it stated that a lot of colleges are starting to become hesitant on spending a hefty price tag on a top freshman, because you have guys like Darren Peterson, who's, even though he's immensely talented, his talent is out of this world. He may be the #1 pick in this year's draft. He's missed half of his team's games this year. And in the games he has played, in the 13 games he's played up to the point of me recording this video, 5 of those games he's logging less than 25 minutes. So you have a guy that's barely playing, even though he may be the most talented player in the country. He's barely playing, getting paid millions just to leave your school next year. And 3 quotes that I read in this article that really caught my attention was one from a high major general manager that said, "Is one $3 million freshman worth more than 3 $1 million players who are fully bought in for a full season?" The second quote is, "If you're spending $8 million and you spent $3 million on a freshman, that's like going out there with a $5 million team when that kid is not playing." And then the third quote is, "Kansas has done really well without their best player, but even when he's out, they probably still have a $10 million roster, which is better than most teams." Now, looking at these quotes, it made me think of my previous example with Kentucky. And like they said, what's more valuable, having a $3 million freshman or having 3 $1 million players? And it made me think, if Kentucky were to put together a roster of, let's just say 10 $1 million players, because you're not going to be able to afford 12 or 15 $1 million players, because everybody wants their playing time. So hypothetically speaking, let's say Kentucky goes out and get 10 $1 million players. Kentucky may be equally as good, if not better. And that's only $10 million spent versus spending $3 million on a Jalen Lowe. Reportedly, don't know how true it is, spending $6 million on a guy like Jaden Quainitz. That's $9 million spent that isn't playing. Even looking at a team like BYU with a fantastic freshman and AJ DeBanza, who's been playing out of his mind. When looking at BYU spent reportedly over $7 million on AJ DeBanza alone. As great as AJ DeBanza is, you can't look at me with a straight face and tell me that you think one AJ DeBanza is better than 7 $1 million players in the transfer portal or even recruiting. And I feel like colleges are starting to realize this. They're shifting away from spending hefty price tags on players and going out and building teams of solid players that are willing to take less. In that same article from Joe Tipton, it was reported a lot of teams slipped away from recruiting #1 recruit Tyron Stokes because of the hefty price tag that he's asking. Now, Tyron Stokes, since the 8th grade, has had a phenomenal body, a phenomenal game, and he's only developed from 8th grade. I remember at one point I felt like he couldn't shoot the ball to save his life. Then recently I watched a Hoop Hall Classic, and all he was doing was shooting step back threes, and he ended up with over 30 in that game. I feel like the way he's developing, he's starting to minimize the weaknesses in his game. And so with that being said, immense talent, in my opinion, future NBA player, and teams are backing away because they don't want to spend money. I feel like the landscape of NIL is starting to change, because let's say he rolls an ankle after his 2nd or 3rd game and decides, I'm league anyway. We know the NBA teams are going to draft him 1st round just off those 2 games alone. If he doesn't play, the NBA teams are going to draft him first round. So why jeopardize anything else when you can sit out the rest of the season, still make that NIL money, and go to the league? And teams know that that's the mindset of a lot of these top recruits coming in, so they're going to start not being willing to spend that kind of money on a guy like that. Now, this is all my opinion. This is all speculation. But I think it's what makes the most sense from a GM standpoint, athletic director standpoint. Why spend $6 million, $5 million, $3 million on guys that aren't playing, on guys that aren't performing at the level that we thought they would perform at, and spend less to ultimately get more? If you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit the like button, you subscribe, and you share the video with your friends. And until next time, I'm out.